Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from RAU'S IAS Study Cell. Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Indian newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the daily edition of the Indian newspaper dated 25th August 2022. And the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. So let us start the discussion. Now, in line with our weekly series of answer writing practice from the Daily News Simplified videos, the question for this week is, in the changing world order, G20 is more relevant to handle the emerging issues as compared to G7. Discuss. And you have to write the answer to this question in 250 words. You can post your answer in the comment section below and get it evaluated if you post your answers before Saturday. This article on page number 6 has been written in the context of the G20 grouping. And the article highlights that India will be presiding over the meeting of G20 in the year 2023. Now, this year's G20 meeting is being held in Indonesia. In this line, the author highlights that there are opportunities for India where India can play a very constructive role in the global geoeconomics as well as geopolitics because of the presidency role that has been provided to it in the year 2023. Now, this is happening at a time when the world is facing certain crucial challenges. And these challenges are posed by the Ukraine war and also the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic imposed economic issues. And that is why this becomes an important forum where all the important countries of the world, including the developed as well as the developing countries, participate in the G20 meeting. If you look at the membership of the G20 grouping, all the G7 countries are part of the G20 grouping. It also includes developing countries like India, and also Russia and China are a part of the G20. And because all the important countries of the world are members of the G20, this becomes a very important forum to highlight and handle the issues associated with the global geopolitics as well as geoeconomics. However, if you look at the role of the G20, it is largely associated with the geoeconomics of the world. That is how the global economy is performing, what are the crucial challenges that are being faced by the global economy, and things like that. However, we all are aware that the world economy is largely shaped because of the geopolitics also. In this line, we all are aware that how the global supply chains were disrupted because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also we have seen that because of the Ukraine war, the global crude oil prices have increased, and at the same time, we have seen challenges related to countries trying to diversify its trades with Russia because of the sanctions that have been imposed by the Western countries, including the US and the West Europe. And in this context, the next year's G20 summit, where India will be the president of the G20 summit, this becomes important and India can play a very crucial role in this context. So let us look at all these aspects one by one. That is, what is G20, who all are its members, and also what are the strengths of the G20 or what is the importance of the G20 grouping. Also some of the challenges and what are the opportunities for India in this line. Let us look at these aspects one by one. Now, if you look at the prelims examination of 2020, a question was asked by UPSC in the prelims examination, that is, in which one of the following groups are all the 4 countries members of the G20? That is, the membership of the G20 grouping was asked. And if you look at the options closely, Argentina, Mexico, South Africa, and Turkey are the members of the G20 grouping. That is why we need to be aware of the members of the G20 grouping. So if we look at the members of the G20 grouping, it includes all the G7 countries. Now, which are these G7 countries? These include Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK and US, as well as one important grouping, that is European Union, is also a member of the G20 grouping. This also includes developing countries like Australia, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, India, Indonesia. And that is why this group and its membership is diversified because of the presence of the G7 countries, developing countries like India, Turkey, South Africa, Mexico, etc. At the same time, it also has the membership of one of the important groupings, that is European Union, and it also includes important countries in the global geopolitics, including Russia as well as China. And that is why the G20 group is very important because of its diverse representation, or you can say it is important because of the diverse representation of different countries highlighting different interests in the global geopolitics as well as geoeconomics. So this brings us to what is the importance of the G20 grouping. So if you look at the importance of the G20 grouping, it should be highlighted that it works to address the major issues that are related to the global economy. These include issues associated with international financial stability, climate change mitigation, as well as sustainable development. Further, if you look at the membership of the G20 grouping, the G20 members represent nearly 90% of the world's GDP, 80% of the global trade, and 60% of the planet's population. Further, the G20 grouping was very effective during 2007 and 8 global financial crisis. And also, it is important forum because of the participation of various multilateral forums or organizations like the United Nations, the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, etc. So all these points highlight the importance of the G20 grouping because its members represent around 90% of the world's GDP, 80% of the global trade, as well as 67% of the planet's population. Also, it is important because of the participation of important multilateral institutions which play a very crucial role in the global economy as well as geopolitics. These include United Nations, the World Bank, IMF, World Trade Organization, as well as World Health Organization. So all these points highlight the importance of G20. Now, despite being a very important grouping, G20 also faces certain challenges. That is, it has not been able to meet its mandate of addressing the major issues related to global economy like the international financial stability, etc. And these are some of the challenges which have been witnessed in the past also. So let us look at what are the issues that are likely to be faced by the G20 and what are the challenges that it has faced in the past. Now, if you look at the challenges faced by the G20 grouping, it is sometimes highlighted that this could become a forum for great power rivalry because of the presence of US, China, Russia in the aftermath of the Ukraine crisis. Now, we all are aware that the US-Russia rivalry is at its peak because of the Ukraine war. Further, because of the Ukraine war, we are aware that Russia is aligning with China, and at the same time, US already sees China as an adversary in the Indo-Pacific and also in the global geopolitics. And that is why, because of the presence of these great powers, it can become a forum for great power rivalry because US, China, and Russia all are members of the G20 grouping. Further, if you look at the performance of the G20 grouping in the past, it has failed to achieve its targets that it has set for itself. For example, in 2014 summit that was hosted by Australia, the leaders had adopted a plan to boost their economies by a collective of 2.1%, which could not be achieved. Secondly, the big powers that are members of the G20 grouping have sometimes seen to be blocking important issues. And that is why the big powers are blocking consensus on crucial global issues. For example, the United States of America had blocked a communique that was signed by the G20 members, which talked about resisting all forms of protectionism. Now, in this line, you might all be aware that the United States of America had started to pursue a policy of protectionism under the President Donald Trump. Now, this protectionism is seen as opposed to the issue of globalization, where all the economies are interconnected and the global trade is conducted in a rule-based manner, which is promoted by the World Trade Organization, as we all are aware. However, the US had started taking certain steps which were seen as protectionist measures, where it had started imposing duties on the imports from China as well as India. And all these issues were seen as instances of protectionism. That is why when the G20 countries wanted to talk about resisting all forms of protectionism, United States of America, which was pursuing protectionism, had blocked this particular communique. Further, it has been highlighted that the G20 countries have been missing out on issues of global importance. For example, in the Argentina summit of 2018, the G20 members had adopted a communique which was agreed by all the members. However, one issue with this communique was that it did not include important global issues like trade, climate change, and migration, which clearly highlights that it has been missing out on certain important global issues, which is the clear mandate of the G20 also, or that is the main objective of the G20 also. Further, the G20 grouping has failed to bring consensus on the dispute settlement mechanism of the World Trade Organization. Now, normally the dispute settlement body of the World Trade Organization is the General Council of the World Trade Organization, which includes all the members. However, if a dispute is not settled at this General Council, it is forwarded to an appellate body. Now, what happens is that in this appellate body, there are 7 members which are appointed to this appellate body. In this line, if this appellate body has to handle any kind of dispute, at least 3 judges are required. Now, what is happening is that the United States of America has been blocking the appointment to this appellate body, and these appointments have to take place with the consensus of all the members of the World Trade Organization. However, since United States of America is blocking the appointment to this appellate body, presently there is only one member in this appellate body. And if you are aware, to handle any kind of dispute, there is a requirement of at least 3 judges to sit and handle that dispute. But because in the present time there is only one member of this appellate body, it has become dysfunctional because of the blocking of appointment of the members to the appellate body by the United States of America. And that is why it is being said that despite being a member of the G20, the United States of America under Donald Trump had blocked the appointment to the World Trade Organization's appellate body. And even the new President Joe Biden is not acting upon this issue of appointment to the World Trade Organization's appellate body. Further, the G20 countries had agreed to raise the International Monetary Fund's reserves with a new special drawing right allocation of US dollars 650 billion. However, it has been argued that given the scale of financial challenge in the emerging economies, it is not enough. We are aware that all the emerging economies, including the developing economies as well as the least developed countries, were adversely affected economically because of the lockdowns that were imposed because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the disruption in the supply chains. And that is why it has been argued that this amount of $650 billion is not enough to handle the challenges of the emerging economies. Also, the G20 members have failed to break the impasse on climate change. In this line, many countries have disapproved the idea of committing to keeping the global warming below 1.5 degree and phasing out of the coal. We all are aware that these are the two important issues that have been finalized at the Paris deal of the UNFCCC. However, the G20 countries have not come up on the same page related to this target that has been set up by the Paris climate deal. So these are some of the challenges that we have seen regarding the functioning of the G20 in the past, and these are also likely to play at the upcoming summits that are happening of the G20 because of the presence of the great powers as well as the issues associated with the Ukraine war. Now, since the 2023 summit of the G20 will happen in India and India has the presidency of the G20 summit for 2023, there are certain opportunities for India which India can act upon. The first is that the presidency of G20 offers a unique branding opportunity for India's recent achievements. In this line, India has been performing well on various parameters, and one of the important factors which highlights that India has achieved considerably is the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. In this line, India has played a crucial role in the vaccine development and also in the vaccine diplomacy. India has also played a crucial role in getting a waiver for the COVID-19 vaccine development at the WTO, which was agreed at the MC12, that is the Geneva meeting of the WTO. Further, there are different fronts on which India has been performing well. These include digital revolution, transition to renewable energy, meeting its targets to counter climate change, which it had highlighted at the Paris climate deal under the nationally determined contributions, and also we have been pushing for self-reliance in manufacturing and reshaping the global value chains. Plus, this can also become a very important opportunity for India to attract investments because it includes some of the most important developed countries of the world, that is, they all are part of the G20 grouping. Further, this also brings a very important opportunity for India to collaborate between the developing countries. So if you look at the presidency of the G20 from 2022 to 2025, these presidencies are in the hand of Indonesia, India, Brazil and South Africa, all of which are crucial players in the economy, and they all are likely to play a crucial role in the coming years. And that is why the upcoming summits of the G20 can be very important for advancing the interests of the developing world and to assert their combined leadership of the global south. Further, if you look at the next 3 presidencies of the G20 from 2023 to 2025, these are in the hands of India, Brazil and South Africa, which are collectively sometimes called as the IBSA countries, that is India, Brazil and South Africa. Now, these 3 countries are also part of the BRICS grouping. However, the challenge that we are witnessing in the BRICS grouping is that it is a China-dominated group because China is the largest economy which is a part of the BRICS grouping. And that is why the upcoming presidencies of the G20 can provide an important opportunity for these 3 countries to collaborate on the sidelines of the G20 grouping, where they will not have the constraints that are posed by the presence of China and Russia in the BRICS grouping. And also, India can play a constructive role at a global level. And India can play a crucial role in bringing together the countries with divergent interests that are present under the G20 grouping. Now, some of the countries with divergent interests which are present in the G20 grouping include the P5 countries, that is the permanent 5 countries of the UN Security Council, the G7 countries which represent the developed countries, and also various developing countries like Mexico, Turkey, India, South Africa, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, etc. Further, besides the countries which are members of the G20 or have the representation in G20, there are other countries which do not have representation in the G20 grouping. And that is why India can also play a crucial role in highlighting the interests of the countries that are not represented in the G20. For example, the African Union is not a member of the G20 grouping and it has the observer status in the G20 membership. And that is why India can play a crucial role in making the African Union's membership of the G20 permanent, like the European Union's. So in this discussion, we have seen certain challenges in the functioning of the G20 grouping. Also, what are the opportunities that have been created for India because of its presidency of the G20 in 2023. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 6 is related to universal basic income. In this line, we are aware that the COVID-19 has imposed adversities on the vulnerable sections of the Indian society. And that is why various economists have argued that in India, the universal basic income should be implemented. In this line, the author highlights that the government of India has initiated various programs and schemes to handle the issues faced by the vulnerable sections. For example, schemes have been started related to food security, schemes related to health, and also schemes related to various kinds of support in the form of PM Kisan, Atal Pension Yojana. All of these kinds of schemes have been started. However, still there are certain challenges that are faced in the implementation of these schemes. And in this slide, the author highlights that in India's case, the universal basic income is not feasible. And that is why the government should focus on providing universal basic insurance, which can secure the vulnerable sections against the adversities or adverse events that happen regularly. For example, we have seen one of the adverse events that was posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the economy as well as on the health of the vulnerable sections. Now, in this article, what we will try to do is that first we will try to understand what is this universal basic income. Then we will look at some of the schemes that have been mentioned in this particular article from our prelims examination perspective. And finally, we will look at the case for implementing universal basic insurance. Now, this brings us to what exactly is meant by this universal basic income. Now, the term itself is pretty explanatory, and it simply means that it is a regular fixed cash transfer payment provided by the government to every citizen or resident, regardless of their socio-economic status, to ensure that they are at least able to meet their basic demands. So, this is basically unconditional. It will be provided to everybody regardless of their socio-economic status. So it's a fixed cash transfer payment system. Now, an example of it could be that the government of India, let's say, provides the cash transfer of 10,000 rupees to everybody. So that can be a case for universal basic income. Now, this is an ideal situation where the government is providing cash transfers to all the citizens of the India regardless of their socio-economic status. However, in reality, it is a bit difficult to implement because of the financial burden that it is going to impose on the government of India. Now, this concept of universal basic income has been proposed by various economists. In this line, it has three basic characteristics. First is that of universality. That is, it covers the entire population without taking into account the socio-economic status. Second is, it is unconditional. That is, it should be given without any condition. That is, it will not be targeting a particular group, and it will not be targeting the particular vulnerable sections, but it will be provided to everybody and every citizen. Third is the agency. That is, the universal basic income should be in the form of cash transfers without dictating the choices. That is, the person who is receiving this universal basic income should be free to make its use in a manner in which that person wants to use it. That is, the recipients should have complete freedom to use the universal basic income in whatever way they deem fit. Now, this is an ideal situation that has been proposed in the form of universal basic income. However, implementation of universal basic scheme can lead to disproportionate burden on the government of India's financial resources. Now, in this line, the government of India has already started various schemes which address the needs of the vulnerable sections. So, let us look at these schemes first, and then let us look at the case for universal basic insurance, which looks like a more feasible solution or alternative to the universal basic income. So if you look at the prelims examination papers of the previous years, questions have been asked related to various schemes of the government of India related to vulnerable sections. For example, in 2016, a question was asked related to Atal Pension Yojana. In 2017, a question was asked related to National Pension Scheme or the NPS. So in this line, various schemes have been started by the Government of India related to food security, health, and also income support. In this line, the biggest scheme of the Government of India related to the food security is the National Food Security Act, which was implemented in 2013. Now, it provides for food and nutritional security by ensuring access to adequate quantity of quality food at affordable prices. Now, some of these salient features can be important for us from the prelims examination. In this line, it covers up to 75% of the rural population and 50% of the urban population. That is, it targets about 67% of the total population. Now, what are the entitlements under this particular scheme of National Food Security Act? First are the priority households. They will be provided with 5 kg per person per month of the ration. And then there are Antyodaya households, which will be provided with 35 kg per household per month. In this line, the food articles that will be provided will include rice, wheat, as well as coarse grain. And they will be provided at a very subsidized price of rupees 3, 2 and 1 respectively for rice, wheat and coarse grains. Further, there is nutritional support component for pregnant and lactating women. In this line, meals will be provided for pregnant women and lactating mothers and children between the age of 6 months and 14 years. Also, maternity benefit will be provided of rupees 6,000 for pregnant women and lactating mothers. Further, it also has a component of women empowerment, that is, eldest women who is 18 years and above is considered as the head of the household for issuing the ration cards. So these are key features of the Food Security Act. Then related to health, the Government of India has also unfolded various schemes. First is the Ayushman Bharat scheme. In this line, it seeks to provide for universal health coverage by adopting two approaches. First is creation of 1.5 lakh health and wellness centers as well as Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. And this Yojana aims at providing health insurance cover of rupees 5 lakh per family per year for secondary as well as tertiary care hospitalization. And if you look at the coverage of this scheme, it aims at covering about 50 crore people who belong to bottom 40% of India's population. And the beneficiaries under this scheme are identified through socio-economic caste census. Now, besides providing support in the form of food security and the health security, the Government of India is also focusing on providing income security. In this line, the government is implementing schemes related to organized as well as unorganized sector. In this line, for the employees in organized sector, the government implements Employees Provident Fund, the new pension scheme, etc. And for the unorganized sector, the Government of India is implementing the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Mandhan Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Yojana, Atal Pension Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandhan Yojana, etc. So let us look at few of these schemes. So first is the PM Kisan scheme. The mandate is that it is a central sector scheme to provide income support to all landholding farmers' families. Benefits in this include financial benefit of rupees 6,000 per year. It is payable in 3 equal installments of rupees 2,000 each every 4 months. And if you look at the coverage, initially the scheme covered only small and marginal farmers with land holding up to 2 hectares only. And later it was extended to all land owning farmers irrespective of the size of their land holdings. But the issue here is that it does not provide benefit to tenants as well as sharecroppers, only to those farmers who are land owning, even if they have very small chunk of land or large chunk of land, that does not matter. But it is not provided to those farmers who are tenant farmers or sharecroppers. Second scheme in this line is the Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandhan Yojana. It is basically a voluntary and contributory pension scheme where there is 50-50 contribution by the subscriber and the central government. Eligibility is unorganized workers can only apply for that, and those workers who have less than rupees 15,000 monthly salary and are in the age group of 18 to 40 years. Now in this line, it provides minimum assured pension of rupees 3,000 per month after attaining the age of 60 years. Further, after the death of the subscriber, the family pension is also provided and it amounts to only 50% of the pension to the spouse. That is, if the subscriber was getting rupees 3,000 per month as the pension, after the death of the subscriber, the family pension will be only rupees 1,500. Further, the contribution by the subscriber will depend upon the age of entry. And also, the ministry which is implementing this is the Labour and Employment Ministry. The next important scheme is the Atal Pension Yojana, which is guaranteed pension of rupees 1,000 to rupees 5,000, which will depend upon the contribution, and it can be received at the age of 60 years. In this regard, the eligibility is that it is primarily focused on unorganized workers, However, any Indian citizen in the age group of 18 to 40 years can join through their saving bank account or post office saving bank account. The government contribution is 50% of the total prescribed contribution of rupees 1000 per annum. Now, two conditions are that first is it is available only for a period of 5 years, and subscribers should not be income tax payers or covered under any existing scheme. The implementing ministry is Ministry of Finance. So these are few schemes that we have seen that the government of India is implementing, which are also in the form of providing support to the vulnerable sections in the form of food security, health security, and also income support as well as pension support after they are out of the work. In this line, the author highlights that in spite of these number of measures, there are various problems and challenges. For example, the Food Security Act, according to Shanta Kumar Committee on Food Corporation of India reforms, around 46% of the food grains get diverted and do not reach the intended beneficiaries under the National Food Security Act. Further, if you look at the health security, about 400 million Indians are not covered under any kind of health insurance. If you look at income security, out of the 500 million workers in India, about 100 million workers have no income security in terms of pension, gratuity, and other income coverage. And regarding the feasibility of implementing a universal basic income, it has also been rejected by the author in the view of higher financial implications of around 4.5% of the GDP on the government's financial resources. So, what is the alternative that the author provides? Let us look at that. So, in this line, the author highlights that there is a need for universal basic insurance because the universal basic income will become very costly and expensive on the government's finances. In this line, if you look at the insurance penetration in India, it has been hovering around 4% for many years, compared to 17% in Taiwan, 9% in Japan, and 6% in China. In this line, the government can utilize the data that is available through the GSTN portal or the eShram portal to provide social security benefits to its employees in the unorganized sector. Further, a model project, that is the Kutumba project of the Karnataka government, can be implemented at a national level. Under this, the families in Karnataka are given unique ID. And using this ID, they can check their eligibility and enroll for various social security schemes. The unique ID also reduces the number of documents and the certificates from the residents repeatedly required by different departments. So these are few suggestions by the author in this regard. That is, there is a need for implementing universal basic insurance. And we have also seen some of the challenges that are faced in the implementation of the existing schemes by the government of India. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 8 is related to the Competition Amendment Bill of 2022. And this bill seeks to amend the Competition Act of 2002. In this line, various important amendments have been done to keep this act in line with the changing times and the changing business types. So in this article, let us try and understand what is the mandate of the competition law in India and what it seeks to do. And after that, we will try to understand what are the proposed amendments and their likely impact. So if you look at the mandate of the competition law in India, it includes the mandate of checking anti-competitive agreements. It prohibits abuse of dominance by strong companies over weak organizations and to regulate merger acquisitions and takeovers taking place in the market, including combinations. Now, this simply means that in a market, things should be fair, the competition should be fair, and companies should not involve themselves into monopolistic practices. And only when there is a fair competition in the market can the other organizations or small business organizations can thrive in the front of the bigger organizations that already exist. And that is why this competition law was introduced in the first place. In this line, the Competition Act provides for the establishment of Competition Commission of India, and it seeks to prevent practices that have adverse effect on competition in a free market. It aims at promoting and sustaining competition in the markets. It also aims to protect the interests of the consumers also, and to ensure the freedom of trade carried on by other participants in the Indian market. So this is the basic mandate of the competition law in India, which seeks to create a fair market based on fair market practices and which aims at countering the monopolistic cartelization kind of tendencies because they stand against the growth of these smaller business organizations as well as they stand against the interests of the consumers. In this line, various amendments have been proposed in the Competition Act of 2002. In this line, the first is related to regulation of combination based on the deal threshold value. Now, in this line, you need to simply understand that the Competition Commission Act of 2002 provided that any acquisition, merger, or amalgamation may constitute a combination. That is, if a company acquires any other company, if there is a merger of two companies, it will be termed as a combination. And this Act of 2002 provided that the parties which are indulging in such kinds of mergers or acquisitions need to notify the Commission of combination only on the basis of asset or on the turnover basis. And this new bill seeks to make it mandatory to notify the Competition Commission of India of any transaction relating to merger, acquisition, etc. with a deal value in excess of rupees 2000 crore. So earlier the criteria was on the basis of asset or turnover, and now a clear-cut threshold value has been set up, which is about rupees 2000 crore. Now the impact of such an amendment will be that it will strengthen the Competition Commission of India's review mechanism, and especially in the fields of digital infrastructure, etc., where majority of such acquisitions and mergers were not reported presently. So now it has mandated that any merger acquisition with a deal value in excess of rupees 2000 crore needs to be notified to the Competition Commission of India. Second is, it has reduced the time period for clearance. Under the previous act, the Competition Commission of India had 210 days to approve any kind of merger, acquisition, etc. after a notice was given. But now in the new bill, the time frame has been reduced from 210 days presently to only 150 working days with a conservatory period of 30 days for extension. Now this will help in speeding up the clearance process subject to analysis. However, the issue here is that this may put the Competition Commission of India under a lot of pressure to clear the mergers, acquisition, etc. And this may lead to delay in clearing of combination cases because it will be overburdened now because of the reduced time period. The third provision is related to the penalty for gun jumping. In this line, the parties will not be allowed to go ahead with any kind of merger acquisition, that is a combination, prior to the approval by the Competition Commission of India. Which simply means that the combining parties need not involve themselves in any kind of transaction before the clearance has been provided by the Competition Commission of India. And if they do so, it is said to be gun jumping. In this line, earlier the penalty of gun jumping was total of 1% of the assets and the turnover. However, the new bill proposes that the penalty will be 1% of the deal value. Further, it aims at making anti-competitive more exhaustive. So under the previous act, anti-competitive agreements included any agreement related to production, supply, storage, control of goods, which can cause an appreciable adverse effect on competition in India. However, the new bill expands the scope of anti-competitive exercises. And that is, it adds that any enterprise or person, even if not engaged in identical or similar businesses, shall be presumed to be part of such agreement if they actively participate in the furtherance of such agreements. So anybody who is even indirectly involved in such kind of agreements and things like that will also be considered under the Competition Amendment Act. So that is why it has expanded the scope of anti-competitive agreements and the parties that are involved in such agreements. Further, the next important amendment is related to settlement and commitment. Under this, the Competition Commission of India may initiate proceedings against enterprises on the grounds of entering into anti-competitive agreements and abuse of dominant position. Now basically, abuse of dominant position simply means that if there is a big company in a particular field and it involves or indulges in discriminatory conditions in purchase and sale of goods and services, it involves or indulges in restricting the production of goods and services in order to manipulate the prices, and also it indulges in practices that are leading to the denial of market access to other smaller companies. And that is why now the scope of this thing has been expanded, and this thing will be controlled further by the Competition Commission of India. Further, the new bill provides exemption from notifying the Competition Commission of India in certain cases. So similar to the European Union's merger regulations, the present amendment bill also proposes to exempt open market purchases and stock market transactions from the requirement to notify them to the Commission in advance. If anything is happening in the open market and in the stock market transactions, that is considered to be open and is not seen as clandestine activity. And that is why there is no need for notifying such things to Competition Commission of India. Further, it empowers the Competition Commission of India to regulate cartelization that is done through hub and spoke model. Now, this hub and spoke model simply refers to involving all the enterprises that are involved in the overall value chain of any product that is produced in a market. Let's say there is a car manufacturer. then the companies that are involved in manufacturing different parts of it are considered as spokes of that particular car producing company. So there can be case when these spokes, which is the part manufacturing companies, can tie up with the car manufacturing company to create a kind of cartelization. That is, they control the market and they do not allow any other company to enter into the market. And that is why currently there is prohibition on the anti-competitive agreements, and it only covers the entities with similar trades that engage in anti-competitive practices. So earlier what was there? If car companies are involving themselves into cartelization to increase the prices of the cars, then only that was considered. However, such kind of thing ignores the cartels that are operated at different levels of vertical chain by distributors as well as suppliers. And in order to combat this, the amendment broadens the scope of anti-competitive agreements to catch the entities that facilitate cartelization even if they are not engaged in identical trade practices. Further, the bill provides a leniency plus, which means that it allows the Commission to give an additional waiver of penalties to an applicant who discloses the existence of another cartel in an unrelated market. So basically, it promotes whistleblowing. However, there is issue that such kind of practices are open to misuse and can be used against the rivals in case of conglomerates. Further, the appointment of Director General and the process of it has been amended now. Further, the process of appointment of Director General is also proposed to be amended. The previous act provided that the central government will appoint a Director General to Competition Commission of India. However, the new bill amends this power and provides or empowers the Competition Commission of India to appoint the Director General with prior approval of the government. Now, Director General is important because the Director General assists in conducting inquiries into contraventions of any provisions of the Act. And now, if the CCI is empowered to appoint the Director General with prior approval of the government, it gives CCI more control to conduct investigations. And further, the new amendments clarify the qualifications of the members of the Competition Commission of India. It has decriminalized certain offences, that is, there will be only financial penalty and they will be not considered in the case of a crime. Further, penalties have been increased, that is, if any false information is filed with the Competition Commission of India, a penalty of 5 crore will be imposed. And for failure to comply with the Commission's direction, a penalty of rupees 10 crore will be imposed. And further, for an appeal to be heard by the National Company Law Tribunal against the Commission's order, the party will have to deposit 25% of the penalty amount in advance. So these are few amendments that have been proposed here, and it is being said that by implementing these amendments, the Commission will be better equipped to handle certain aspects of new age market and transform its functioning to become more robust. So these are few important aspects of the competition bill. This bill is yet to become an act, so only understanding the key features is important for us from the exam perspective. And regarding the various aspects of the competition law of 2002, that has been provided in the PDF attached to this video. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, in today's newspaper, there are two important articles for us from the prelims examination perspective. This article is on page number 7 and another one is on page number 13. Now, this article is basically related to the suspension of democracy in Tunisia. And in this line, a coup happened in Tunisia in 2021. And that was when the Tunisian president had invoked emergency powers and had fired the prime minister and had suspended the parliament for 30 days. However, this suspension has now been increased. Now, Tunisia is an important country because it was hailed as the only success story of the Arab Spring uprisings. Now, around 2010, there were various uprisings against the dictators in the North Africa and the West Asian countries. And that was popularly termed as Arab Spring. In this line, it had started from Tunisia and it was seen as one of the important success stories of the Arab Spring that had started in this particular region, and this was seen as a functional democracy. However, this coup has suspended the democracy because of the suspension of the parliament, which has been done by the invocation of emergency powers. In this line, this particular thing that a coup has happened in case of Tunisia can become an important aspect for us from the prelims examination perspective. Secondly, its location, that it shares its borders with Mediterranean Sea and shares a border with Libya and Algeria, can also become important for us from prelims examination perspective. Second important article for us from the prelims examination perspective is on page number 13. And here, the United States of America is carrying out air strikes in eastern Syria on Iranian targets. So it is targeting areas that are used by militias that are backed by Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard. In this line, you might be aware that the United States of America has designated the Revolutionary Guards as a terrorist organization. And these airstrikes are happening in a particular region which is known as Deir Ezzor, which is a part of Syria. Now, it's a strategic province and it borders with Iraq and contains oil fields. However, this region is controlled by Iran-backed militia and the Syrian forces. And this particular region has also been the target of Israeli airstrikes. And that is why the location of Deir Ezzor becomes important for us from the prelims examination perspective, because it has considerable oil presence. Also, it is controlled by Iran-backed militias and attack is happening on it by US airstrikes as well as Israeli airstrikes. Plus, it shares its border with Iraq. So, all these are important points for us from prelims examination perspective. With this, we conclude today's discussion. Now, let's take up the question for the day.